us a distinguished guest who is not only a great mathematician, but also one who is adept in Vedic tradition. Professor V. Krishnamurthy is a former professor of mathematics and the deputy director of BITSI with over 2 decades of association with that great institution. Born into a family of an erudite Vedic scholar, Sri R. Vishwanatha Shastrigal, he has been systematically trained in the Vedic traditions and the Shastras since boyhood. He has lectured widely to both domestic and foreign audiences on our ancient scriptures like the Upanishads, Valmiki Ramayana, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Bhagavad Gita. His expositions have been acclaimed for their precision, clarity, and an irresistible appeal to the modern mind. As a prolific writer with more than a dozen books on mathematics, Hinduism, and Advaita philosophy, he is noted for his missionary zeal for making these accessible for the educated layman. His latest book, Thus Spake Krishna, is an exposition on the Bhagavad Gita. It's available on Amazon. Do try and see if all of you can get a copy of it for yourselves. In addition, he is a recipient of half a dozen awards and honors for his distinguished thoughts and contributions. He was given the Distinguished Service Award by the Mathematics Association of India in 1995, the Seva Ratna Award by Centenarian Trust, Chennai in 1996, this award for exemplary contributions to education by the Rotary Clubs of Guindy and Chennai Samudra in September 2001, and the TT Award for Excellence Adhyapaka Ratna T. Totadri Iyengar Educational Trust, Chennai in 2002. These are just a few of the awards to mention, and the latest being a Grateful to Guru Awards by the Indic Academy. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us today. We now request Professor V. Krishnamurthy to talk to us about the importance of Gita for all age groups.
Thank you, Sandipani. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Sandipani Gurukula. It was a pleasure for me to listen to children chanting shlokas just offhand, just like that. Oh, it was a great pleasure. I wish the whole world gets into this habit. Well, today my talk is going to be on importance of Bhagavad Gita for all age groups. Just 15 minutes. The Bhagavad Gita, you know, is a book that teaches you how to live. It is actually a manual for the art of purposeful living. How to live one's life is not a thing to be learned after one has lived his life. It is better to learn it as far as possible when you are young. I recently conducted a survey among my social media friends on the question whether the Gita book is meant for all age groups. The response was very educative. Many people regretted the fact that they had not been exposed to the Gita early enough in their growth. This regret is because Gita tells you how to face the problems of life, how to react to them, how to respond to the ups and downs of life. The ups and downs of life start even when you are young. So for the purpose of a meaningful discussion today, let me divide the age groups into 3. The first group is from age 15 to 30. The second from 30 to 60. The third, last, is beyond 60. That the Gita is a book for this last group of people, usually called retired people, is a general opinion held by large mass of the public. So I don't have the responsibility of telling you how it is useful for them. So here I am going to take up the question of how it is useful for the younger generations. Let me get to some specifics. Right in the beginning, Krishna says, Matra sparshasta kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkata agama apayino anityan tam stitikshasva bharata. Agama apayinaha, they come and go. They only touch you and go. So this is the description of every experience. They come and go. They touch you and go. Now, therefore, every experience is transient. Nothing stays. This is so simple a thought, but so powerful. Powerful an advice. We should not have to wait until we are 60 or 70 to be knocked and reassured by the advice that everything comes and goes. Let me take a simple example. I am talking to the parents. Your 15-year-old son or daughter comes back from the school annual sports experience where he missed to be the winner in the 100 yards dash. This experience brings you two types of youngsters. One who is totally upset because he has missed the first prize. The other is so desperate and depressed that he would not go to any sports activity hereafter. For the first one, you have to quote and explain the Gita sloka, Sukha Dukkhe Same Kritva, Labha Labho Jaya Jayau, Tato Yuddhaya Yudhyasve, Naivam Papamavapshasi. What Krishna said to Arjuna, hey, you have to treat both Sukha and Dukkha, happiness and unhappiness, in the same way. Labha Labho, whether it is gain or loss, whether it is success or failure, this is what is needed for that first youngster who is totally depressed. For the second one, who would not go to any sports activity hereafter, he is so much depressed, you have to say, Uddhare Atmanatmanam Natmanamavasadaje. Just now our children recited this. Those parents who had the opportunity and who have tried this would agree with me. And those parents who never thought of this would now regret that nobody told them so. You see why the Gita is useful for all people now. You may say, sir, this is a very simple advice. We could have got it from anywhere. Why Gita? That is the point. Gita has umpteen such advices, not one. Do's and don'ts, that once you learn these tips for living a moral, an ethical, a spiritually elevating life, unless you learn it at an younger age, you will not be able to learn it later. Slowly, you have to begin to learn from the Gita itself the rationale for all such advices. You remember, all children ask you, whatever you say, whenever you give them an advice, it asks you, Mother, why? Why should I do it? So the why is all there in Gita. For every advice, the why is there in the Gita. It may not be understood immediately at the youngest age, but slowly, when he comes to the second level, 30 to 60, he will understand. I will come to something deeper now. Gita, chapter 16, sloka 21 says, Trividham narakasyedam dwaram nashadam atmana kama krodhastata lobha tasmade tatrayam tyajet. Desire, anger, and greed are the three enemies of man. They will lead you to hell, says the sloka. Keep aside the concept of desire, because desire, the bad effects of desire will not be understood when you are in the lower age groups. As you rise up in life, you will understand why desire is bad. But the fact that anger and greed are our deadly enemies, this fact has to go into our system even when we are angry. When the 8-year-old comes back from his play fighting with another 8-year-old neighbor. Mother has to talk about anger and greed. You cannot be angry. You cannot be having lobha, greed. You cannot be greedy about his success. Also know, the longer you allow the anger and greed to stay in you, it is very difficult. It's going to be more difficult to remove that in later ages. That is why in the lower age, as a child, as a teenager, between 15 and 30, you have to learn it. The Gita gives an authentic account from the personality of Krishna himself, how all this fits into a grand strategic scheme of piloting the ship of life. Even for the most complex advice of Gita, Krishna says, do your work with your attachment. Even for this complex advice, he gives you a strategy. What is the strategy? The strategy is the concept of dedication. When I was teaching in Pilani, one student came to me and said, sir, I appreciate your Loka Sangraha idea in the Gita, and you said we should not have any attachment for the results. So I am not going to worry about my studies. I will go to a village nearby. I will do social service. I am going to do that. Now, how do you tell him the right thing? So I told him, hey, who sent you hither? Who sent you to Pilani? Your mother. And what did your mother tell you at that time? The mother told you, concentrate on your studies, see that you come up first in everything. Don't waste your time in chatting with your friends in a nearby restaurant. Remember, your duty is to listen to your mother. More than your duty to study, your duty is to listen to your mother. Your mother is your dedicated deity. Dedicated deity means whatever the deity says, you have to do. Whatever the deity likes, you have to do. Whatever the deity does not like, you should not do. That is called deity of dedication. Mother is your deity of dedication. So at this time, you cannot leave your studies and go to village to do Loka Sangraha. Loka Sangraha does not mean service to the society. Loka Sangraha, Janaka and others became great because they used Loka Sangraha to spread Sanatana Dharma. Loka Sangraha does not simply mean service to society. And service to society comes at the right time, not when you are a student. You have to be dedicated to your mother and do what she says. Remember, the concept of dedication is a great strategy of the Gita in the 3rd and 4th chapters. You don't learn this if you don't learn this when you are a teenager, you are going to find it very difficult to learn it when you are 60 or 70. So the first age group, 15 to 20, 15 to 30, has to do a lot of shravana, listening to expositions of the Gita. So all these things will go and sink into the system. They are not just advices like recipes. They have a rationale in the larger context of our web of life. That is the web which Gita weaves for you. The second group, 30 to 60, should complete the Shravana part. First group, Shravana. Second group, the Manana part. The Shravana part has now been permanently inbuilt into the system by Mananam. And you weigh them all, what you have heard, with your experience of good and bad. Because in the age 30 to 60, you have got enough experience. Gita keeps on saying, avoid attachment. Develop a no-hate attitude. Raga and Dvesha are both to be avoided. The first age group, 15 to 30, would rebel against the concept of this non-attachment. Because they will say, how can we live without attachment, without likes and dislikes? This is a standard question. But Gita says, very early in the game, who asked you not to live or not to be involved in your activities through the senses? When you say raga and dvesha should not be there, they did not tell you to completely be away from your senses. That's not possible. Raga dvesha viyuktaistu vishayan indriyaishcharan, second chapter. You have to avoid raga and dvesha, but you have to go with your senses and use your senses to do whatever you have to do. Vishayan indriyai sharanam. That is the thing. And this kind of strategic activity cannot be learned when you are 60 or 70. You do get involved in the activities of the senses, but do not have raga or dvesha, says the Gita. This advice is not only for the old. It is, unless you practice it from boyhood, you will not get it. It was very heartening to listen to the chanting of the Gita slokas by little children. I am sure they will understand all this when they are of the right age. Like this, there are so many things. Food habits, chapter 17. Man's three streams of behavior, chapter 14. Right? Good and bad traits of man, chapter 16. All these will make sense even to the first age group, but definitely more strongly to the second age group, 15 to 30, 30 to 60. If one has not practiced the right things before he is 60, then it is too late. Anyone who starts the Gita only after he is 60 is a late starter. He will pay the price for it. Remember, even pious people alternate. Even pious people alternate between God and the gutter-like world, just like a fly. The fly sits in honey, also sits in the gutter. That is what ordinary man does, unless he has learned the right thing from boyhood. That is why exposure to the Gita early in one's life is important. Of course, there are many philosophical nuances, which in the first age group, 15 to 30, may find it difficult. But as he enters the second level, 30 to 60, he will understand it. Approaching this even from a practical standpoint, if one is exposed to the ways of living that Gita lays as the foundation when one is young, it allows one to consciously or subconsciously practice them when you enter the second age group of 30 to 50. So he will get to appreciate the finer nuances as he graduates to the third age group. In Pilani, my students used to ask the interesting question, "Sir, what do you think is the right proportion of time that one should devote to spiritual learning?" I used to give them the following formula. Age 10 to 20, 10% of your time. Age 20 to 30, 20% of your time for spiritual study and practice. Like that, in the decade of your life, you should devote n-1 times 10% of your time to spiritual matters. So when you are between 60 and 70, 60% of your time should be devoted for spiritual elevation. And there is nothing to beat the Gita as the best study and discipline for this spiritual elevation. I think this much is enough to say that the Gita is a book for all age groups. Thank you. Namaskar.